I'm pregnant, Ryan.
You cheating whore. You already thought you girls thought I'd pass off someone else's baby as mine?
I'm pregnant, Ryan. My voice was shaking, but I was smiling so hard it hurt. For a split second, he just stared at me. No smile, no tears, no joy. Then suddenly, smack! The sound echoed through the room as my head snapped to the side. His eyes turned cold, empty, like I was a stranger. "You cheating whore," he said, his voice low and deadly. "You really thought you could pass off someone else's baby as mine." My name is Emily Carter. I'm 31 years old, and for the past 3 years, my life has revolved around a single, fragile dream: becoming a mother. I have long chestnut hair that falls in soft waves past my shoulders, pale skin that burns easily under Seattle's grey skies, and the quiet, observant nature that people often mistake for weakness. But the truth is, I've endured more than most people ever see. Month after month of negative tests, silent tears in the bathroom, smiling at baby showers while something inside me slowly broke. And then, it finally happened. 2 pink lines. That night, I stood in our modern Seattle home, surrounded by warm lights and the soft hum of laughter. I had planned everything carefully, too carefully, maybe. The house smelled like vanilla candles and fresh wine. Every detail mattered. Because this wasn't just an announcement. This was redemption. My husband, Ryan Carter, 34, stood across the room charming everyone like he always did. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sandy blonde hair and an effortless smile that once made me feel safe. Ryan was the kind of man people trusted instantly, confident, sociable, always the centre of attention. But over the past year, something about him had shifted. Subtle at first, colder, more distant. I told myself it was stress, work, life. I never imagined it was something else. Near the kitchen island stood my best friend, Megan Brooks, 30, a petite woman with sharp green eyes and shoulder-length black hair. Megan had always been fiercely loyal, the kind of friend who noticed everything. She worked as a freelance videographer, which explained why she held her phone up, quietly recording the moment. "This is going to be big," she mouthed at me with a grin. I smiled back, my heart racing. Then there was Linda Carter, Ryan's mother, a tall, elegant woman in her late 50s with perfectly styled silver blonde hair and the posture so straight it felt intimidating. Her lips were always pressed into a thin line when she looked at me. Polite, but never warm. She had never said anything outright cruel, but her disapproval lingered in every glance. I picked up a fork and tapped it gently against my wine glass. The room fell silent. 40 faces turned toward me. Ryan walked over, wrapping an arm loosely around my waist. His touch felt unfamiliar, but I ignored it. This was our moment. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice trembling slightly. I looked up at him, smiling wider than I ever had before. "We have something to share." I took a breath. "I'm pregnant." For a split second, nothing. Then the room exploded into cheers. Megan gasped. My friends clapped. Someone shouted congratulations. Even my own heart felt like it might burst from happiness. I turned to Ryan, expecting him to lift me, kiss me, laugh, anything. But he didn't move. His arm dropped. His face went pale. "Ryan?" I whispered. Then, smack.
The force sent me stumbling backward, crashing into the gift table behind me. The sound echoed louder than the music, louder than the laughter that had just filled the room. Silence swallowed everything. I tasted blood. "You cheating whore," Ryan said, his voice low, shaking with rage. His eyes, cold, empty, locked onto mine like I was someone he didn't recognize. "You really thought you could pass off someone else's baby as mine?" The room froze. Someone gasped. Megan's phone was still recording. And I realized, as I struggled to breathe, my life had just shattered in front of everyone I loved.
The silence after the slap felt heavier than the impact itself, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I was still on the floor, my cheek burning, my vision slightly blurred, when Ryan took a step back, as if I disgusted him. "You think I'm stupid?" he said, his voice shaking, not with sadness, but fury. I slowly pushed myself up, my hands trembling, my body still in shock, but something inside me refused to break completely. "Ryan, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice unsteady but clear enough for everyone to hear. That's when he said it. Cold, flat, final. "I had a vasectomy 4 years ago, Emily, before we even got married. I can't have kids." The words didn't just land, they shattered something fundamental inside me. My ears rang louder than before, drowning out the gasps around us, until all I could hear was that one sentence repeating in my head. 4 years. That meant every tear I had cried, every night I blamed myself, every test I held in shaking hands, he had known. He had watched me suffer in silence while hiding the truth. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man in front of me with the man I had loved. "You let me believe something was wrong with me," I whispered, my voice cracking. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, pacing now like a man cornered by his own anger. "Because I knew this would happen," he snapped. "I knew you'd find someone else eventually, and now here we are." His logic was twisted, cruel, and completely disconnected from the reality I had lived. I shook my head, tears finally spilling over. "I never cheated on you, not once. You're the only man I've been with." My voice rose despite the humiliation, despite the audience still frozen around us. Megan was still there, her phone lowered now, her face pale but alert, her sharp eyes scanning every reaction in the room like she was already piecing something together. Behind Ryan, his mother Linda crossed her arms tightly, her expression unreadable, but her silence louder than any accusation. Then she spoke, her tone soft but cutting. "Ryan, let's not embarrass ourselves further. This is already unfortunate enough." She didn't look at me when she said it, as if I had already been dismissed as irrelevant. That hurt more than I expected. I turned away from her and focused back on Ryan. "Then prove it," I said suddenly, the words surprising even me. My hands were still shaking, but my voice steadied. "Let's do a paternity test. If you're so sure, then let science prove it." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes, hesitation, maybe even doubt, but it vanished just as quickly. He scoffed. "Fine. You want to drag this out? Go ahead, but don't expect the result to save you." The rest of the night dissolved into fragments. People left without saying goodbye, whispers following them out the door like smoke. I remember Megan helping me sit down, her hand gripping mine tightly, grounding me. "This isn't over," she murmured. "Something's off." I clung to that sentence more than anything else. Later that night, when the house finally emptied and Ryan locked himself in the guest room without another word, I found myself standing in front of the small wall safe in our study. I don't even remember deciding to open it. My fingers just moved. The code was one I had seen him use before, Inside, among documents and old files, was a neatly folded medical report. I pulled it out, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. There it was in black and white. Ryan Carter, vasectomy procedure, dated 4 years ago. Signed. Official. Real. I sank into the chair, the paper trembling in my hands. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a secret. A choice he had made alone and forced me to live with without ever knowing. The next morning, I dragged myself into work, my body moving on autopilot. The office felt colder than usual, or maybe it was just me. I caught snippets of conversation as I walked past my co-workers, quick glances, hushed voices. My colleague Daniel Harris, a tall, lean man in his late 30s, with tired blue eyes and a reputation for knowing everything before anyone else, leaned against his desk as I passed. "You okay, Emily?" he asked quietly. His tone wasn't mocking, just observant, almost cautious. Daniel had always been distant but perceptive, the kind of person shaped by years in a competitive corporate environment where gossip spread faster than truth. I nodded, but he didn't look convinced. "People are talking," he added, not unkindly. "You might want to be prepared." I walked past him without answering, my chest tightening. It had already spread. My private nightmare was no longer mine alone. And standing there, surrounded by whispers and judgment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about proving I was innocent anymore. This was about surviving what came next. By the second day after the party, the silence in my house had turned into something suffocating, something alive that followed me from room to room. I barely recognized myself anymore. Emily Carter, 31, once composed and resilient, now pale, hollow-eyed, and barely holding together. My long chestnut hair stayed tied in a messy knot, my oversized sweater hanging loosely on a body that hadn't eaten properly in days. I had always been the kind of woman who endured quietly, who believed patience could fix anything. But this was different. This wasn't something I could wait out. My phone buzzed constantly on the kitchen counter, lighting up with messages I stopped opening after the first few. Ryan's family had made their verdict. I was guilty. The first message came from his aunt, then his cousin, then his sister, each one sharper than the last. Words like liar, disgusting, shameful, blurred together until they lost meaning and became pure noise. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the screen until my vision blurred. Ryan himself hadn't spoken to me since that night. He still lived in the house, technically, but it felt like we existed in separate worlds. I'd hear the faint sound of the guest room door closing late at night, or the coffee machine running early in the morning, but we never crossed paths. Not once. It was like being haunted by someone who used to love you. By day 3, I stopped going to work. I couldn't face the whispers, the sideways glances. Instead, I stayed home, wrapped in silence and dread. That was when Lucas Carter started showing up. Ryan's younger brother, 29, had always been quieter than Ryan, lean, slightly taller, with dark brown hair that fell carelessly across his forehead and eyes that lingered just a second too long when he looked at you. He had a calm, almost gentle demeanor, the kind that made people feel safe around him. Unlike Ryan, Lucas didn't demand attention. He observed, listened, and lately, he was always there. The first time he knocked, he was holding a paper bag filled with takeout. "You probably haven't eaten," he said, his voice low, careful. I didn't argue because he was right. I hadn't. He didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. He just sat across from me at the kitchen table, unpacking containers like it was the most normal thing in the world. It should have felt comforting, and in a way it did. But something about it also felt off. Megan noticed it too. She came by that afternoon, her sharp green eyes immediately locking onto Lucas as he stood by the sink rinsing dishes. Megan had always trusted her instincts more than anything, shaped by years of capturing raw, unfiltered moments through a camera lens. "You're here a lot," she said casually, but there was an edge beneath her tone. Lucas just shrugged, offering a soft smile. "Someone has to make sure she's okay." It sounded reasonable. It was reasonable. But Megan didn't look convinced. Later, when he stepped outside to take a call, she leaned closer to me. "Emily, don't you think it's weird?" she whispered. I frowned. "Weird how?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't know, just pay attention, okay?" That night, I didn't sleep. I hadn't slept properly in days, but this was different. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of something I couldn't fully remember. Darkness, the feeling of being half awake, a presence beside me. I woke up gasping, my heart racing, my skin cold with sweat. I told myself it was stress, trauma, my brain trying to process everything. But the feeling lingered long after I opened my eyes, like something just out of reach, something I should remember, but couldn't. By day 5, Lucas was coming over daily, always with food, always with that same calm expression, that same steady presence. He never pushed, never crossed a line, but he was there, constantly, sitting a little too close on the couch, letting his hand rest just a second longer than necessary when passing me something. I noticed it. I told myself I was imagining things, that grief and fear were distorting my perception. Because the alternative, that something was wrong with the only person who hadn't turned against me, was too much to handle. And so I stayed quiet. I accepted the food, the company, the silence. Outside, my world was falling apart. Inside, something else was quietly shifting into place. And I didn't even realize it yet. I told myself I was imagining things, that what I saw in the living room earlier was just stress, just my mind trying to connect dots that weren't really there. So I went upstairs, changed out of my work clothes, and stood in front of the mirror longer than I needed to, studying my own reflection like I was trying to remember who I used to be before everything started feeling slightly off. And for a moment, I almost convinced myself to let it go, to be the version of me that kept the peace, the version that didn't ask questions. But then I heard Chloe laugh downstairs again. Softer this time. Not the loud, carefree laugh she used around me, but something quieter, more intimate. And my body moved before my brain could stop it, carrying me halfway down the staircase where I could see into the living room without being seen. Ethan was standing now, close to her, closer than before. His posture relaxed but focused entirely on Chloe. His hand lifted, fingers brushing lightly against her cheek, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And Chloe didn't pull away. She leaned into it, her eyes half closed, like she knew exactly what that touch meant, like it wasn't new, like it had happened before. And in that moment, something inside me went completely still. Not shattered, not broken, just cold. Because this wasn't confusion anymore. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was familiarity. And then he tilted his head slightly, moving closer, and she mirrored him. And I knew. I knew before it even happened. They were about to kiss. My foot shifted against the wooden step, the smallest sound, but it was enough. They jumped apart instantly, like two people caught doing something they couldn't explain. Ethan's hand dropping too quickly, Chloe stepping back, her face flushing red. And they both started talking at once. "It's not what it looks like," Ethan said, too fast, too rehearsed. And Chloe added, "We were just practicing." Her voice shaky, her hands twisting together like she was trying to look smaller, more innocent. And I walked the rest of the way down slowly, my heartbeat steady in a way that surprised me. Like my body had already accepted what my mind was catching up to. "Practicing," I repeated, my voice calm, almost detached. And Ethan exhaled like I was being difficult again, like I was interrupting something inconvenient. "Yeah," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You know, just making it look real, in case people expect affection." He shrugged, like it was logical, like touching her face like that was part of some script they needed to memorize. And Chloe nodded quickly, stepping forward just enough to be seen, but not enough to be blamed. "We have to be believable, Olivia," she said softly, her tone careful, almost pleading. "You're reading too much into it." There it was, the shift, the narrative turning against me. "You're overreacting," Ethan added, his voice firmer now, slipping into something familiar, something controlling. "You always do this, take something small and make it into a problem." He looked at me like I was the one who had crossed a line, not him, not them. And Chloe lowered her gaze, playing her role perfectly, shoulders slightly hunched, lips pressed together like she was trying not to cry. And I almost admired how seamless it was, how easily they fit into those positions. Him, the reasonable one, her, the victim, and me, the unstable one. For a second, I considered arguing, listing every detail, every inconsistency, every instinct screaming that what I had just seen wasn't practice, it was habit. But then something unexpected happened. I didn't feel the urge to fight. I didn't feel the need to defend myself. Instead, I felt clarity, sharp and quiet, settling into place like a final piece clicking into a puzzle I hadn't wanted to finish. Because the truth didn't need their confirmation anymore. I had already seen it with my own eyes. "Right," I said finally, nodding once, stepping past them towards the kitchen. "Practice." And I didn't look back, didn't raise my voice, didn't cry. Because crying would mean I was still hoping for something to fix, and I wasn't, not anymore. I reached for a glass, poured myself water, my hands steady, my mind already moving somewhere else entirely. Because if they thought I was going to stay in this role, the blind, forgiving wife, then they didn't know me at all. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting. I was thinking, planning, calculating, quietly building something they wouldn't see coming until it was too late. That night, after the clinic and the office and everything that felt like the final collapse of my life, I didn't go to bed. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for exhaustion to knock me out. My body felt heavy, but my mind refused to shut down. I'm Emily Carter, 31, someone who used to believe memory was something solid, something reliable. But now it felt like a broken mirror, reflecting pieces I couldn't fully trust. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes again, darkness, movement, the faint feeling of someone beside me. Not clearly, never clearly, just enough to make my chest tighten. Around 3 a.m., I sat up suddenly, my breath catching as something shifted from vague unease into something sharper. A memory, not whole, not complete, but enough. I remembered waking up in the middle of the night weeks ago, sometime during the window when I must have conceived. It had been pitch black, the kind of darkness that swallowed everything. Ryan insisted on blackout curtains because he couldn't sleep with even a hint of light. I remembered that clearly now. I remembered being half asleep, disoriented, feeling hands on me, familiar enough that I didn't question it at the time. I thought it was him. Of course I did. Who else would it be? But the more I tried to hold on to the memory, the more it slipped, like it didn't want to be seen. The next morning, Megan came over without calling first. She looked different, focused, alert, her usual warmth sharpened into something investigative. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, and her eyes scanned my face the second I opened the door. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. I didn't argue. I just stepped aside and let her in. We sat at the kitchen table where everything had started falling apart, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I told her everything I could remember. The darkness, the silence, the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Megan didn't interrupt. She just listened, her fingers tapping lightly against the table as she processed every detail. "Okay," she said finally, leaning forward. "We're not guessing anymore. We're checking facts." That was Megan, practical, relentless, shaped by years of documenting reality through a lens instead of trusting what people said. "There are cameras all over your street," she continued. "Doorbells, security systems. If someone came in or out, we might find it." I hesitated. The idea made my stomach twist. "What if we don't find anything?" I asked quietly. Megan's expression didn't soften. "Then we keep looking." There was no doubt in her voice, and somehow that steadiness kept me from falling apart completely. We spent the next few hours knocking on doors. Most people were polite but unhelpful. Apologies, shrugs, nothing useful. Until we reached the corner house. The woman who answered introduced herself as Mrs. Eleanor Briggs, a widow in her late 60s with short grey curls and sharp, observant eyes that missed very little. She wore a thick cardigan despite the mild weather and leaned slightly on the doorframe as she studied us. "You're Emily, right?" she said before I could even introduce myself. My stomach dropped. Of course she knew. Everyone knew. Megan explained quickly, keeping it vague but focused. Mrs. Briggs listened, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if replaying something in her mind. "There was a night," she said slowly, "a couple weeks ago, late, around maybe 3 in the morning?" My breath caught. Megan leaned in slightly. "What did you see?" Mrs. Briggs adjusted her glasses. "Someone going into your house. I thought it was your husband at first, but—" She paused, frowning. "He moved differently. Taller, I think. And he kept looking over his shoulder. Didn't feel right." The world tilted slightly beneath my feet. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. "I remember because it stood out. Most people don't come and go at that hour like that." Megan's eyes flicked toward me, something intense and unspoken passing between us. This wasn't imagination anymore. This wasn't just a broken memory. There had been someone else. As we walked back to my house, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The pieces were still incomplete, still scattered, but now they were real. And for the first time since everything began, I wasn't just drowning in confusion. I was getting closer to something I wasn't ready to face. The walk back from Mrs. Briggs' house felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. My name is Emily Carter, and for the first time in weeks, the confusion inside me began to harden into something else, fear mixed with clarity. Someone had been in my house that night. Not Ryan, someone else. Megan didn't say anything at first, but I could see it in her face. She had already started connecting the dots. "We need to figure out who had access to your house," she said finally, her voice steady but urgent. I froze mid-step. The answer came too quickly, too easily. "Ryan. And me," I said. Then my stomach dropped. "And—" I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. Megan did it for me. "Lucas." We didn't speak for the rest of the walk. Back inside the house, the air felt heavier than before, like the walls themselves knew what we were about to uncover. Lucas had been coming and going freely all week, never knocking twice, never hesitating, like this place belonged to him. I sat down slowly, my hands cold, my thoughts racing. "Ryan gave him a spare key 2 years ago," I said, barely above a whisper. We never asked for it back. Saying it out loud made it real in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. Megan didn't waste time. She pulled out her phone, scrolling quickly before turning the screen toward me. "I didn't want to jump to conclusions before," she said, her voice tight, but I started digging. On the screen was a message thread, screenshots she had managed to get through a mutual contact who knew Lucas. The sender name was his. The message read, "I think I finally have a chance. He doesn't even see what he has." My chest tightened painfully. "That could mean anything," I said instinctively, even though my voice lacked conviction. Megan shook her head. "There's more." She swiped again. "Timing matters. Soon." The words felt calculated, planned, not random, not harmless. I stood up abruptly, pacing, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "Lucas wouldn't. He's been helping me. He's the only one who stayed." Even as I said it, images flashed through my mind. His constant presence, the way he always seemed to arrive exactly when I needed something, the way his eyes lingered just a little too long. Megan didn't argue. She just watched me, letting the realization unfold on its own. "We need Ryan," she said finally. That was the last thing I wanted. But she was right. It took 3 calls before Ryan answered. His voice was cold at first, distant. But when I told him we needed to talk, really talk, something shifted. 20 minutes later, he was standing in the doorway, looking worse than I had ever seen him. Ryan Carter, 34, once confident and composed, now looked worn down, his shoulders tense, his expression uncertain. He avoided my eyes at first, like guilt had finally found its way in. "What is this about?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I handed him Megan's phone. He read the messages in silence. I watched his face change, confusion, then disbelief, then something darker. This doesn't prove anything," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "It doesn't have to," I replied quietly. "Think about it, Ryan. The key, that night, the timing." His jaw tightened. I saw it then, the moment doubt cracked through his certainty. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the same way he had the night of the party, but this time it wasn't anger driving him. It was realization. "I gave him access," he muttered. "I let him into our lives." His voice dropped. "I did this." Before I could respond, the front door opened. Lucas stepped inside like he always did, calm, composed, completely unaware that everything had just changed. He paused when he saw Ryan, then glanced at me, then Megan. For a brief second, something flickered across his face. Not surprise, not confusion. Recognition. Ryan moved first, stepping forward, his entire body tense. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and controlled, in a way that felt far more dangerous than shouting. Lucas didn't back away. He just tilted his head slightly, studying us with that same quiet intensity. "About what?" he asked, his tone almost curious. I felt my pulse in my throat. Because for the first time, I wasn't just afraid of the truth. I was standing right in front of it. The moment Lucas stepped fully into the living room, something shifted in the air, like the truth had finally decided it was done hiding. I stood there, my back straight despite the tremor running through me, my heart pounding, but my mind clearer than it had been in days. "I'm Emily Carter," and for the first time since that night, I wasn't just reacting. I was ready to face whatever came next. Ryan moved closer to me without hesitation this time, his presence no longer distant, but tense. protective in a way that felt unfamiliar after everything that had happened. "We know," he said, his voice low, controlled, but shaking at the edges. Lucas didn't respond immediately. He just looked at us, then at Megan, then back at me, and slowly, he smiled. Not the soft, reassuring smile I had grown used to, but something colder, something deliberate. At that moment, Megan stepped forward, her phone already in her hand, her posture sharp and unyielding. "We have everything," she said firmly. "The messages, the camera footage from the neighborhood, and the video from the party." Her words landed like a series of blows, each one stripping away whatever illusion Lucas had been hiding behind. For a brief second, his expression flickered, not fear, not guilt, but calculation. Then it settled again into that same calm mask. "You think that proves anything?" he asked quietly, his voice smooth, almost amused. But he didn't deny it. Not once. Ryan took another step forward, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Tell me the truth," he demanded, his voice rising now, the control slipping. "Tell me what you did." The room held its breath. I felt it, every second stretching longer than it should. Lucas exhaled slowly, almost like he had been waiting for this exact moment. Then he looked at me, not Ryan, not Megan, me. And something in his eyes made my stomach twist. "You really want to know?" he said softly. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. And then he said it. "I planned it." The words hit harder than anything else ever had. The room seemed to tilt, the ground beneath me shifting as everything I had feared finally took shape. He spoke calmly, almost gently, like he was explaining something simple. He talked about watching me for years, about knowing how much I wanted a child, about waiting for the right time, about the night he came into the house, using the key Ryan had given him, slipping into my room while everything was dark. My hands started shaking uncontrollably, my breath coming faster, sharper. Ryan let out a sound, half rage, half disbelief, and lunged forward, grabbing Lucas by the collar. "You sick," he started, but Megan's voice cut through sharply. "Don't touch him. We need him talking." That was when the doorbell rang. No one moved at first. Then Megan stepped back slightly, her eyes flicking towards me. "I called them," she said quietly. My heart skipped. 2 uniformed officers entered moments later. Officer Daniel Reyes, a tall man in his early 40s, with a steady, grounded presence and sharp, assessing eyes, and his partner, Officer Claire Donovan, younger, composed, with a firm but calm demeanour that carried authority without aggression. They took in the scene quickly, Ryan gripping Lucas, me standing frozen, Megan holding her phone like evidence. "What's going on here?" Officer Reyes asked. Megan didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, explaining everything with precision, the messages, the footage, the timeline. She showed them the video she had taken at the party, capturing Ryan's accusation, my reaction, the chaos. Then the camera footage from the street, someone entering the house late at night. Lucas didn't interrupt. He just stood there, watching me, that same unreadable expression on his face. "Is this true?" Officer Donovan asked, turning to him. Lucas tilted his head slightly, then shrugged. "I didn't force her," he said, his tone almost casual. "She thought I was someone else." The words made my stomach drop, my entire body going cold. Officer Reyes's expression hardened immediately. "That's enough," he said sharply. They moved quickly after that. The sound of handcuffs clicking into place echoed louder than anything else in the room. Lucas didn't resist. not even a little. As they led him toward the door, he looked back at me one last time, and for a second, just a second, I saw something flicker there. Not regret, not guilt, possession. The door closed behind him. Silence followed. Ryan's family arrived not long after, Linda among them, her posture still perfect, but her expression shaken, uncertain. She approached me slowly, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "Emily, we didn't know," she said. Others echoed her words, apologies, regret, support that came too late to matter. I stood there, listening, but none of it reached me. Because something inside me had already broken free. The house felt different after Lucas was taken away. Not lighter, not better, just quieter. Like something dark had finally been named, but the echoes were still there. I stood in the centre of the living room, arms wrapped around myself, feeling the fragile shift inside me. I'm Emily Carter, 31, and for the first time in weeks, I understood something clearly. I wasn't broken. I was standing at the edge of a decision. Ryan stood a few feet away, his posture no longer rigid with anger, but weighed down by guilt. His once confident presence had softened into something uncertain, almost hesitant. "Emily, I'm sorry," he said, his voice low, raw, stripped of the arrogance I once knew. He looked like a man trying to piece himself back together after realizing he had shattered something irreplaceable. I looked at him, really looked this time, and realized something just as important. I didn't feel safe with him anymore. "I know," I said quietly, "but that doesn't change anything." His face fell slightly, but he didn't argue. That was new. That was too late. The next few weeks moved like a slow unraveling. Legal papers, quiet conversations, the kind of finality that doesn't come with shouting, just silence. I filed for divorce without hesitation. Ryan didn't fight it. In fact, he showed up to every meeting looking more exhausted than the last, like regret had become a permanent weight he couldn't put down. Once, outside the courthouse, he reached for my hand, then stopped halfway, like he remembered he no longer had that right. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for this," he said. I believed him. I just didn't care anymore. Because I had something else to protect now. Someone else. I moved to California 2 months later. The sunlight there felt different, warmer, brighter, like it didn't carry the same weight as Seattle's grey skies. Megan came with me. Of course she did. Megan Brooks, 30, fierce, sharp, and unshakably loyal, had never once left my side through any of it. Where I had once been quiet and enduring, she had always been direct and relentless, shaped by a life where she learned to trust action over words. "We're not just starting over," she told me as we unpacked boxes in my small apartment near the coast. "We're building something better." And for the first time, I believed it. Pregnancy changed me in ways I didn't expect. Not just physically, but emotionally. There were still nights when memories crept in, fragments of fear, shadows of what happened, but they didn't own me anymore. I went to therapy, worked through the pieces, learned how to separate what had been done to me from who I was. That was the hardest part. Letting go of the idea that I was defined by that night. 9 months later, I held my daughter in my arms for the first time. She was small, warm, perfect. A tiny life that had come from something terrible, but was not defined by it. I named her Hope, because that's what she was. Not a reminder of the past, but proof that I had survived it. That I had chosen to keep going. Years passed. Slowly, steadily, I rebuilt everything. Megan and I started small at first, just a local support group for women who had gone through trauma, meeting once a week in a rented space. But it grew. Word spread. Stories connected. Pain turned into strength. Eventually, we opened a centre, something real, something permanent. A place where women could come and not feel alone. Megan handled the operations with her usual sharp efficiency, while I worked directly with the women, listening, guiding, understanding in a way only someone who had lived it could. One afternoon, years later, I saw Ryan again. He stood outside the centre, older, quieter, his presence no longer commanding but subdued. "You've built something incredible," he said. There was no expectation in his voice, no demand, just acknowledgement. "I'm glad you're okay." I nodded. "I am." And I meant it. He hesitated, then gave a small, almost relieved smile before walking away. That was the last time I saw him. That night, I sat on the floor of my living room, Hope curled up beside me, her small hand wrapped around my finger. The sound of her breathing was steady, peaceful. I looked at her, then at the life I had built, and realized something that felt stronger than anything else I had known. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a survivor. And this was my new beginning. So, if you were in my place, what would you choose? Would you forgive the man who hurt you? Or walk away and never look back? Hold on to love, or protect your peace? Fight to rebuild something broken, or accept that some things are meant to end? And what about the truth? If it comes too late, does it still matter? Or does the damage already define everything? If you were me, would you raise this child as a reminder of pain, or as a symbol of strength? Tell me honestly, what would you do? I really want to know where you stand. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful, emotional stories like this. Because some stories don't just entertain, they change the way you see the world.